Okay, hi, this is Professor JPS back again. This is Communication Arts 101, Section 1, March 11th, 2020. So we're continuing this session on advertising, the advertising chapter, Chapter 4. Advertising stuff in the advertising chapter to discuss a little about a guy called Sigmund Freud, who was the father of psychoanalysis, who was writing beginning of the 20th century and the latter part of the 19th century. And Freud was interested very much in this idea of, he had a theory of the subconscious mind. Now, I'm no Freud expert or psych expert, but I want to talk a little bit about Sigmund Freud and his theory of the subconscious mind, or sometimes referred to as the unconscious mind, to get a sense of how advertisers tap into the sense of secret desires that people may have and the notion of subconsciousness. Because it's a very effective tool in advertising to do what's called subliminal advertising. So just a couple of words. Consciousness basically just means that you're alive and awake and aware. That we're all just living, breathing organisms on the planet Earth, right? I know this seems weird to discuss this, but consciousness just means that we're human beings who have the capacity to learn a language, to socialize with other people, to grow, to understand how our bodies work, to understand how we work in conjunction with the rest of the world, to be aware, to understand our own awareness, to understand that we're mortal, that to understand all of these ideas is to have a consciousness, okay? We don't really think about it too much because we're just too busy being conscious, right? But think about it this way. When you go to sleep, have a dream, and you have a really vivid dream. And sometimes we can have really odd dreams or strange dreams, or, when we're younger, certainly sometimes maybe some sensual dreams, right? When our bodies are changing. And sometimes those dreams are disturbing or weird or strange or exciting or bizarre, I don't know. But what that is our subconscious coming out, because those dreams are our own, right? Everyone's responsible for their own dreams, about how weird or icky or disgusting or fun or bizarre, right? I make a joke often that when my students disappoint me because they're not reading the textbook, that I'm very nice to them when I'm conscious with them. Oh, hey, how are you? Nice to see you. And then I get really upset because I have to sublimate my anger of my students not reading. And then I go to sleep at night and I have a dream that I'm like, killing my students because they didn't read. Well, of course I don't want to kill my students, but what that means is I've made my anger and it's gone in the back of my consciousness, what Freud would call a subconsciousness, something that triggers in the back of your head. And we've all had dreams we'll never tell a living soul because we're so weirded out by them. But it's our dream. It's our subconsciousness speaking to our dream state. So that's kind of what I mean when we're talking about consciousness, okay? Freud was interested in tapping into this idea of what he called a subconscious. And he broke them down into three areas, well, two main areas with a balance between the two, okay? The one he called the id, or ID, id. And the id represents all desires, regardless of consequences. Okay, that's Freud's notion, the id, ID. And then the opposite of the id is something called the superego. And the superego is the opposite of the id's drive. The id's drive for whatever, you want. The superego checks the drive of the id. It's sort of like the conscience of the subconscious. It's the part of you that says, well, maybe I shouldn't be so selfish, as opposed to the id, which is the part that everybody has that has wants and desires. Those two things, the id and the superego, are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And in between those two things, for Freud, is called the ego. The ego rests between the id and the superego. So when we say a person has a big ego, what we really mean is the id is winning the battle between id and superego. Now, what does this all have to do with advertising, may I ask? Because advertisers are only interested in the id. They are interested in making ads that are very carefully calibrated to tap into that idea of subconscious desires. Now, often it's sensualized or sexualized, but sometimes it's not. It's just almost a kind of graphic trick that's played to trigger our subconscious desires. When I say desires here, I don't mean just sensual desires or sexual desires. I just mean wants. Once for food, or once for a new car, or once for whatever. It's all kinds of desires. And I don't think that we realize how much psychology goes into advertising, okay? So for Freud, it has to be with this notion of, Freud was interested in how human beings are trying to get in touch with themselves and reaching you on a subconscious level, okay? And there's a number of interesting examples that demonstrate this idea of an idea that's there and not there simultaneously, tapping into our subconscious desires. So in the next section, I'm going to show you some examples of that. But for right now, I want you to write down to Google subliminal advertising and Google images of subliminal advertising, okay? And we're going to end this section right now and then come back and show the examples. Thank you.